Hello and welcome everyone to the Mindful Running podcast. Imagine living in a city where you didn't have to rely on public transport, be bothered about blocked roads or packed pavements. Imagine having superhero abilities, being able to leap from rooftop to rooftop as if nothing can stop you. Parkour is not about always about jumping buildings. Parkour or free running is all about looking at obstacles as possible challenges that you can overcome by overcoming your fear and using fear as an ally. Today, our guest is Dan Edwards. He's the founder and CEO of Parkour Generations, a multi award winning and multinational organization for parkour, and has studied practical movement, functional skills, and physical fitness his entire life, with an elite background in fighting arts before finding parkour. Dan created the globally recognized ADAPT Parkour coaching qualifications, which have been delivered in over 35 countries, as well as the Parkour Fitness Specialist certifications, the worldwide Parkour for Schools program, and unique Animal Paths movement curriculum for young people. Dan was also central to the creation and success of the world's first national governing body for the discipline, Parkour UK. His education programs have been accredited by numerous international bodies, and across a 20-year career in teaching, Dan has delivered courses, workshops, and events to tens of thousands of people worldwide and has no plans to stop anytime soon. His education programs focus on the science and art of coaching, movement, holistic competence, and health. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you. Very, very good to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And excited to have this conversation with you, Dan. And without wasting much time, if you can just tell us, what is Parker? Because I think it already existed from like the earlier on the Neanderthal times and all that. But what is Parker really, or free running?
Yes, I mean you're absolutely right. In some ways, it has existed forever because parkour is really just about harnessing the natural movement potential of the human body, which obviously the human body's evolved in order to maximize its movement skill and capability and resilience to keep us alive for as long as possible and to get us from A to B, to hunt, to find food, whatever. So in some ways, humans have always moved athletically, and parkour is really a way of harnessing that movement, and refining it and improving it so that you challenge your not only your body but also your mind and your psychology, as at the same time. So it's a very much a holistic practice, which uses movement to challenge and improve the self.
Yeah, and so it was already there, right? I mean, how did you actually bring it and take it forward and bring it into the limelight, make it more official?
Yeah, well, so parkour was as a discipline in its modern guise. It was founded in France in the 1990s, by a small group of people living in the suburbs of Paris, and those young people who kind of grew up playing and moving in the suburbs, and just challenging themselves and exploring their physicality. The difference between them and every other group of kids around the world is that for some reason that group, they decided to sort of formalize their play and create a discipline out of it, a practice, and they had various influences from martial arts to gymnastics, acrobatics to superhero comics to military stuff to movement practices from France in the past. And they brought all these elements together, and they refined and sort of crystallized all that into a discipline, which originally they called le parcours, and then they called l'art du déplacement, the art of displacement, and then the name parkour and the name free running came around as well. So it was started in France in the 90s, but it didn't really grow very fast there, for various reasons. And it was only really when it kind of spread to the UK, and a few of us started training in the UK, and It got some attention here with the authorities, such as the city of Westminster and the government and some of the schools, who started to sort of ask us if we could teach it to them, and to kids and to various sort of demographics. That was when it began to sort of pick up, let's say, build up a sort of head of steam as a practice that could be accessed by people rather than just watched on in a movie or a commercial. So it became more accessible at that stage, and from the UK is where it spread to the rest of the world, really, in that sense. But yeah, initially it was born in France, and it was, for many years, it was just practiced by a very small group of practitioners in the suburbs of France before it became, well, a world phenomenon.
Yeah, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. The first scene of Casino Royale, that's completely Parker at another level, right? With Sebastian Foucan and Daniel
Yes.
Craig.
Yeah, so that's one of the so Sebastian is one of the original practitioners from France. So he was one of the founders, and Casino Royale was one of the first movies that sort of showcased it in a big way. The actual first film that showcased it was a Luc Besson film called Yamakasi in 2000, which is a French movie, and that featured the Yamakasi, which was the name of the name that the original practitioners gave themselves, which is a Lingala word that means strong body, strong mind, strong spirit, and that was the original name for the first group. So that movie Yamakasi was made by Luc Besson in 2000, I think. That was the first time it was seen on the big screen. That's the first time I saw it, and then after that, it started to get attention as a spectacle, as something that people knew this was going on. It was used in TV idents, TV commercials, and it started to pick up sort of um, a media following in that way. And then it was just a case of, well, how do we give people access to it? How do we make, people wanted to learn it, and therefore we needed to create a structure by which they could actually find a place to go and learn, find a class, find someone that could guide them and coach them. And that meant creating teaching structures. That meant creating kind of an education process around it. And that's what we did in the very early 2000s, and that gave birth to Parkour Generations and to the kind of coaching model, I guess, the teaching apparatus of parkour around the world.
It's wonderful because, half the time when anyone would see a Parker video, they would be like, or probably it would come with the disclaimer saying, don't try this at home. Like you have these stunts, right? Where they kind of say, and it's so wonderful to know that there is something like this that everyone can do. There is obviously an approach, there is a study, and there is a way to go about it. So, yeah, so it's good that you brought something like this that people would just see it on screens to everyone, available to everyone on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And that was a big thing for us back then, was, because we knew the benefits of this discipline. We were practicing it. We loved it. We were practicing it just for the love and the joy of what it gave us. And we could see the benefits in terms of how strong it made us, how agile, how competent, how coordinated, how it gave you a tool through which to engage with your fear and those kind of limitations, and really find out about yourself, really gain some serious self knowledge. We knew it had all those benefits, but we also knew at the time that it was very hard to access it. There was no way you could sort of learn it. You could watch it, and you could
Yeah.
at the time you could stream videos, download videos and watch them, but there was no YouTube or anything like that, so it was very hard to access it or access any information about it. And we wanted to change that. Myself and Forrest and Stefan, two of the other founders of Parkour Generations, we were very keen on making it more accessible to people and giving the benefits that parkour had brought to us, making that more accessible to more people. And that was a 10-year process back then. It took a long time to build that up and make it work, and find ways to do it, and it works, but it took a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot happening to actually reach here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And you know what? And how did you get this interest at an early age to get into things like this?
So it's an interesting question. I've thought about it a lot,
Mhm.
and in some ways, I mean, I think back I grew up in the 80s, and back then the kind of the role models you were exposed to as a young boy were action heroes and martial arts stars and very physically competent and resilient and resourceful individuals. These were the role models that we were exposed to. So it was natural in a way for us to want to be that way, to be the same as those role models. So it was natural for us to sort of want to learn martial arts and to want to be fit and to want to learn how to survive and look after ourselves and have all these cool skills or whatever. So in
Yeah.
some ways it was just that kind of um, childish desire to emulate role models. And I got into martial arts very young, and my peers and my friends and were all into it too, and we took that training very seriously, and that was my first sort of physical training. I grew up in the countryside as well, so most of my days were spent in the forests, just playing and building camps and throwing spears at each other and whatever. So we grew up with this very sort of physical, every day, all day, outdoors physical outlet. Then we added martial arts to that. Then we added sort of more serious fitness training and strength training, and then we added the psychological elements of meditation and trying to understand the self through the philosophies that came with the particularly the East Asian martial arts that I followed, and that kind of all coalesced and just made me very interested in understanding what my body and mind could do from teenager onwards, and never really stopped. So I just was always into that kind of those kind of things. And then I encountered parkour in my early 20s, I guess. Yeah, sort of early mid
Wow.
20s. And when I was living in Japan, training in fighting arts out there, I saw this movie Yamakasi on the big screen. It was only shown
Mhm.
in France and Japan and on the cinemas for some reason. So
Mhm.
I saw that and was immediately kind of captivated by it, and wanted to find out more about that, and did find out who those people were, the French founders, and then started training a little bit myself, or trying to emulate it, because I was living in Japan at the time, so there was no access to anyone in person. So just tried to emulate that training and realized that it was a whole other aspect of using your body and mind that I had neglected and I wasn't aware of, and just the practical reality of what can you do with your body in your environment? Can you climb that building? Can you get across this gap? Can you move quickly and smoothly across these rails and walls? Can you do that? It was a very real test in a way. And I realized that I wasn't very good at it, despite all the physical training I've been through and all the martial arts and all that sort of stuff. I was realized like this is something that's lacking. I'm not, I don't have the physical capability to do it. I sort of had, but there's a lot of sort of functional strength that was missing, and also the alignment of body and mind that is required to do that. That was missing. So I immediately realized this was a missing element in my practice, and therefore kind of threw myself into it. And it really sort of changed and enhanced everything else I did as well, in terms of making me aware of what I was capable of as a human being. So the intro, you sort of talked about, superhuman. Imagine being superhuman and being able to do this and
Yeah.
that. That is the interesting thing is that all humans are capable of doing that, and it's not superhuman at all. It's just human. That is what humans are potentially capable of. We've just forgotten that potential because we don't use our bodies anywhere near how we should, because we live in a very modern industrialized society and all that. So
Yeah.
we've lost the potential. We're not using the potential to the full. And parkour, I think all parkour is doing is showing to the in a way showing to the world, this is what humans are capable of. It's nothing to do with being superhuman or anything like that. They're just human beings, but they're just human beings using their bodies and minds in alignment to its fullest potential. Um, so yeah, it's very much every human's birthright to be able to do that.
Yeah. And that's when I say that, you've brought it up to people to even know that there is something like this, which is not superhuman. It is human. I mean, there are humans actually doing that. And obviously, they've practiced so much to do that one thing that looks like that basically keeps you in awe. But there are like 100 trials to do that, to get that one right. And
Yes.
yeah, and like you said, you started out early, and in your 20s, to have that meditative spirit in your mind is also a big deal. I mean, we talk about it now, like way later, right? To have that thing from insight to bring about that there should be something like a meditative spirit. That is something I'm lacking. You were totally passionate about it.
Yeah, yes, and I would attribute that to the martial arts, I suppose. And I started training in martial arts when I was about 8 or 9, and I was, fascinated by Bruce Lee movies and all the stuff that young boys were at the time. It was pretty simplistic when I started, but in my approach to it. But as I grew into my teenage years and started training more seriously in martial arts and began to understand the philosophies around it, that was when I that stuff came with it automatically, I think. So, I was it wasn't strange to me, and I was reading. I was lucky as well in that my parents were a little, let's say, unorthodox, so I was exposed to very broad philosophies from a young age. So I studied Taoism and Buddhism and kind of every sort of major philosophy of human culture, I guess, I looked at in my teenage years. So and the teachings of thinkers like Jiddu Krishnamurti and Alan Watts and all this sort of stuff. So that bombarded my teenage years, and so that kind of, I guess, became very standard for me. It wasn't unusual. So and that was
Wow.
good. But that was definitely started by interest in the martial arts, which is why I think, practicing in a holistic discipline like a good martial art from a young age is incredibly valuable for a human being, because it lays down the track work, kind of lays down the foundation structure, the architecture, let's say, for the understanding of transformative practices. So even if you don't stick with those practices and you change as you grow up, your brain understands the structure of, if I apply myself and train in this way and this way and this way, and study and learn this way and this and this, then I can improve myself in those things, and that will have beneficial effects. That will have rewards for me as an individual, intrinsic rewards, not extrinsic, but intrinsic reward in doing that. There's intrinsic value in doing that, and I think learning that as a kid is probably the most important thing you could give to a child, because then, whether or not they stick with those particular disciplines, they then will always seek out practices that will improve them as individuals for the whole of their life. So I was lucky, I guess, in that I was exposed to that stuff while I was young.
Yeah, and there are just like so many parallels one can draw. One is with Parker, with martial arts, and everything that you said right now. It applies to life in general. So, knowing
Mm.
your background, Dan, I mean, people might think that, okay, so here's this person who's like been at it since he was 8, and he's been passionate about martial arts. And, so is that thing in their mind that is Parker only for the fit and flexible and the risk takers, or who is it for?
Yeah, so it's natural to think that, right? Mainly because of the media. So the media obviously showcases the high level, spectacular end of parkour, the
Yeah.
roof jumping stuff and all that, which is a very, very, very tiny element of parkour. It's less than 1% of the practice is training at height. Very, very, very few people go and train at height and jump across rooftops. It's a tiny percentage of parkour practitioners that do it. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's a good thing. You can do it, but most people don't do it because you don't need to do it. And it's quite hard to access rooftops to train on. It's actually much easier to access street level training and whatever. So, so it's normal for people to see that as parkour. But the reality is that, and this is, all of our education, all of our classes and all that we've taught to hundreds of thousands of people worldwide now, is that parkour is it's a movement practice. So as long as you're alive and can move in any way, you can improve and refine that movement. That is what we do. So we have classes for older people, we have classes for kids from 1 year old upwards. Many of the people
Wow.
in our classes are not athletes, they're not fit, they start later in life. They have physical issues that they developed over years of inactivity, but through practice of parkour and movement, they learn to improve those and fix those and improve their lifestyle and standard of living. So it is absolutely for everyone, because it's just movement. It's not even that parkour is for everyone. It's that your life is going to be a life of movement, right? While you're living, you're moving pretty much. As soon as you stop moving, you start dying. Really, that's the nature of all things in nature. So, whether you like it or not, movement is intrinsic to your life. Your entire brain and body is designed to move. It's entirely focused on managing movement. So whether you like it or not, you are going to move. So it's really just a question of how well do you want to move, and how interested and invested you are in improving your movement so that it maintains your health and keeps you going for a long time and makes your life easier and less painful, and gives you more options to go and do interesting things. So it's not even a question of parkour is for everyone if they want it. It's a question of, guess what, you're going to have to move. So do you want to move well or not? And that's just a question of how. And then if the answer is yes, I want to move well, then the next question is, well, how do you practice that, and are you practicing that, and how regularly are you doing that? So it's kind of a choice you're presented with at at birth. It's a
Yeah,
question of what are you
yeah,
going to do with it.
right. So is it like people think that, oh, I've already missed the bus? At what age? I mean, people at any age can join, right? Or is
100%.
there something that people, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've had people join classes in their 80s and 90s. So
Wow.
I mean, 100%. At whatever stage you're at physically, whatever age you're at any time, you can start to improve your movement and therefore your health and your fitness. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you've got 80 years left or 1 year left.
Yeah.
You can improve that and make that last year better, or extend it to 2 or 3 or whatever, or you can improve the whole of the 80 years if you start at the beginning or whatever. So you can start absolutely at any time, because parkour is just about refining the movement skill that you have. So when we do veterans classes or parkour for older populations, it's movement training that is suited to their particular level of physicality and their particular level of resilience and health and fitness. So they would do much less. They would do much lower impact movement. So they will take much less impact because their bodies probably don't have the musculature to handle the impact
Yeah.
anymore. Not yet. They need to build that up again. So it's lower impact. It may be less dynamic, but it may be more about balance and stability and coordination and spatial awareness and these sort of things that, as an older human being, you definitely need in order to make sure you don't fall over and just to look after yourself. Just fall prevention stuff, which parkour has been proven in studies now to aid in fall prevention, to reduce the chance of falling, and then if you do fall, to improve your chances of falling well. So
Oh,
so it's absolutely applicable to anyone. It's just a question of how will it apply to you, and how will you use it in life, which is the same in any discipline, right? Martial arts is the same. When you're 20 and you learn martial arts, most people are into very
yeah.
active stuff. They want to use it. They want to fight in tournaments, competitions. They want to use the skills. So it's very fiery, very physically animated. But as you go on, in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you see people that are still practicing their martial art, but it's become much slower, much more maybe like Tai Chi or one of these disciplines, which is much more about maintaining health and longevity and overall well-being. But it's just a variation on the martial art theme, but they're still practicing a martial art. And parkour is exactly the same.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dan. We have a few questions and comments from people that I will just put up. We have a question from Ajay. He says, do you teach it to the defense or other armed forces?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ajay. And yes, we do. We have done so for many years, in various ways. So we have a department that's called Parkour Tactical, and that department has specific programs that are designed for operational personnel. And they're sort of mainly two types of programs for them, which is one which is just practical fitness, just literally using parkour to develop a very practical functional fitness that is going to give them the type of body and the type of movement skills they need in order to deal with their surroundings. And the second one is an actual sort of urban navigation sort of program, which is looking at acquiring specific techniques which will help operational personnel and groups of operational personnel to move quickly and efficiently and quietly through normally urban terrain, seeing as there's much more sort of urban engagements these days, and not only military, but also police, fire brigades, ambulance services, anyone that might need to access urban terrain quickly and efficiently, and safely, could benefit from these kind of movement skills and movement training programs. So yeah, we do. We've taught the British military, the American military, groups in Asia,
Wow.
all over.
So Parker is actually saving lives.
Yes, I would like to think so. Yes,
Yeah.
um, and obviously the most benefit it's made is in just getting hundreds of thousands of people. There's roughly 100,000 sort of registered, let's say, practitioners in England now, according to the Active Life survey from Sport England. So, which is, to give you an idea, is twice as many as do skateboarding and 3 times as many as do judo, 4 times as many as do triathlon. It's about half the amount of people that do rugby. So it's a lot of
Mm.
people that do it here now,
Yeah.
or have tried it and have practiced it in some way. And that's the main benefit it has, right? In that just helping normal people get healthier and fitter and get more confident with using their body and exploring their space and their environment and more ownership of their the world they live in, more ownership of their city. That's the main benefit parkour has, I think. But if it can also help, operational units be safer and more effective, then great. We're very happy to do that, and we love training those sort of organisations because they're very focused individuals. They very much know what they want to learn, and that's for a coach. That's a really good dynamic to have.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. We have a comment from Dev Vyas. Hearing you is always an inspiration.
Ah, Dev. Hello, Dev. I know Dev well. He was on the course that I taught, the Adapt Parkour Coach certification that I taught, and he's a great guy and a good coach out there too.
Yeah. We have a comment from Ravi. I wanted to jump around like Jackie Chan, but without martial arts training.
That's good. It's good to link that. Jackie Chan is often seen as one of the sort of inspirational figures in parkour. So the early practitioners were very much inspired by Jackie Chan's movies and his actions, and he absolutely was um, embodying. He would never have called it parkour. He wouldn't have seen it as its own discipline. But the way he moved was so perfect, so complete, so competent through his training. And obviously, psychologically, he was so confident to take these risks and do the stunts that he did. But yeah, his movement skill definitely was a massive inspiration to the early generations of parkour practitioners. And he showed what a human being is capable of. If they're confident, they align their body and mind, they train hard. Obviously, he trained incredibly hard with the Beijing Opera School. So great athlete, and yeah, he's an inspiration to all
Mm.
of us. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dev is again asking, when are you coming to India?
Hopefully soon. I mean, now that the global restrictions are all sort of calming down and travel is open, or more open, the ADAPT courses, which is the global parkour coach certification for those that don't know, that those are beginning to be run much more internationally again, because tutors are allowed to travel now, and people can travel to and from different countries to learn. So hopefully. We'll be back in India soon. We already have a lot of international courses planned this year, and hopefully India will be on the list again soon. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be one of the tutors running that course because
Wow.
I
Yeah, we
always
look
I
forward.
always love visiting India.
We look forward to that, Dan. Yeah.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So coming to children and Parker, when it's always a good thing to start early. And I think children are also quite confident. They don't think twice before doing a particular jump and so on. So it's easier to mold them. Plus, their bodies physically also kind
Mm.
of goes with their mind. So
Yes.
can you tell us the role of Parker in children's Parker, especially, how does it help them in problem solving or anything that comes their way? Why should kids join Parker?
Yeah, and this is probably the greatest benefit that parkour can have. So anyone can learn it at any age, and if you take it up as an adult, it will hugely benefit you in terms of fitness and health and physicality and psychologically and all that. But it is much better to develop a high level of physical literacy while you're young, because if you grow up as a physically literate child, and by physical literacy, what I mean is a child whose understanding of what their body can do um, matches what their body can do. You see what I mean? There's an alignment between. So most movement sort of happens in this action perception coupling, right? So there's a perception of what your body can do, and then there's the action. Then you try that thing, and then you get feedback from that, which changes your perception of what you can do, whether you failed or not, etc. So that action perception coupling is the process that happens in all movement. whether you pick up a glass of water or whether you're doing a backflip. So the closer those, the more aligned those are, the more aligned your perception is to your actual capability, and your strength and fitness and flexibility and all that. The more those two are aligned, the more physically literate you are, because the more your brain understands what it can and can't do. So the more coordinated you are, the more likely, the more spatially aware you are, all this sort of stuff. So so children that grow up moving a lot, so children that grow up in the countryside have been proven to grow up with more physical literacy. Children that grow up in social structures or cultures that are less industrialized, so they're growing up more in sort of pre-industrial societies, they typically are more physically literate across the board on average, than kids who grow up in cities and kids who grow up in very highly developed, industrialized societies, where they have less room to play, less room to move, less room to explore, and are more risk averse. Those children typically are less physically literate. And if you grow up physically literate, you are much more likely to be healthy, to have fewer postural problems, fewer musculoskeletal problems. You're less likely to develop obesity, and therefore all the things that come with that, and the liver disease and the heart disease that is the main killer in the modern world. So physical literacy at a young age generally is more likely to just give you a healthier, better standard of living for your whole life than a non-physically literate child. So we should absolutely, the key to healthy children is to encourage them to keep their natural physical literacy. It's not even that you have to sort of teach them it, because you're born with the software and the hardware in place to do that. You just have to let them do it. You have to let them play, let them move, let them explore. So what parkour does is it just sort of forces play back into their life in a way, by putting it in a structured setting. So rather than sitting on their chair for an hour at school, if they're in a parkour session for an hour, they're actually exploring what their body can do. They're developing physical literacy, and it's general physical literacy. It's not sport specific. And that's also very important at a young age, is to have general physical literacy before you have specific physical skill acquisition. And there's a problem in that the modern education system, certainly in the UK and other countries, has it the other way around, in that you're never exposed to general physical literacy. You're taught very specific sport skills from a young age, with the idea being that will make you better at sport, which will help the school. But it's actually completely backwards. If you create physically literate children, they'll be able to pick up sports very, very easily across the board, and you will have a broader base of sports capable children. So you will do better in sports, and this has been proven already in the schools, particularly in the States. So you definitely want to have physical literacy given to children at a young age, and parkour is a really great way of doing that, because it just builds on the natural desire to play and to move that all children have, and just takes that and expands it and stretches it and refines it, and eventually builds it into a discipline as they become a teenager. So which then spreads on into their whole life. So it's a really good way of doing it. It's not the only way of doing it. You could just let kids play in the woods all day and they'll develop the same physical literacy. But seeing as that doesn't happen in the modern world much, because kids are raised in cities more and more, you need
Yeah.
to find ways to allow that physical literacy. They need to have outlets for it. And parkour is a good way of doing that for sure.
Yeah. And I think majority of the kids fall in that, right? I mean, in the urban world, I mean, very few have
Sure.
access to open playgrounds and nature all the time. They have to make an effort to be there. And
Yes, 100%. And it's just how it's just the environment they're in, the context they're raised in. It's nothing, and that's almost random and arbitrary. It's just a bit of a shame. But yes, if there are great studies that show, if you take your average 5-year-old in England, that's raised in the city, and your average 5-year-old in England that's raised in the countryside, and ask them to do a pull-up, the city
mm,
raised kids in general, they cannot do a single pull-up. But a 5-year-old kid from a country raised kid, even at 5, can do a pull-up. And the reason is that the country raised kid has probably been climbing trees and stuff. It's
yeah.
probably been outside climbing around, and so they can pull their body weight up automatically, which you should be able to do as a human being. So, but the city kids, very few of them could. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. That shows even at a young age there's a developmental weakness in being raised in an urban environment, unless you've got parents who expose you to that at a young age purposefully. Whereas in the countryside, it just happens automatically, because you just spend your day outside, climbing around, playing, jumping, and embracing nature. So we need to find ways to orchestrate that in an
Yeah.
urban world.
Yeah. And bring it probably more mainstream in schools and other
Yeah,
places.
100%. They've
Yeah.
got to give more time back to kids to play. So less, more unsupervised time, less supervised time. Just let them play, let them explore. They need more time like that. That's good for their brain. It's good for their body. It won't make them worse academically. It'll make them better academically because it'll improve their problem solving skills. It'll improve their perception of the world, everything, their motor mapping. So it'll make them smarter. This is very easily proven through neuroplasticity. So it made them smarter. It made them give them more capacity for intelligence because you develop more brain cells in the 20 minutes after movement
Mm.
than at any other time. So you have more capacity for intelligence if you move more, um, and they will become fitter and stronger and healthier. So their attention spans will be better, all that sort of stuff. So there's no argument not to give kids more time
Yeah.
to play. Basically, all the science points to that. So, and yet
Yeah.
that isn't happening. That isn't happening. The time to
Yeah.
play is being reduced, and the space to play is being reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced by education
Yeah.
bodies that don't understand how a human body and brain works.
Yeah. Probably get someone from the education body to join Parker.
Well, that has happened, and there are. It's not that it's the physical education um, teachers in the world generally are super good. They know all this stuff. They want to apply it. It's the fact that they're not given the support to do so. That's the
True.
issue. The amount of time they're given with the kids is very limited, and what
True.
they're allowed to do with the kids is becoming more and more limited because of because of a failure to understand risk and risk management and all that sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so it's not that the knowledge isn't there. The knowledge is there in the physical education world. It's just not applied because the schools, are bowing to other pressures and political pressures and
Correct.
things, and parents' pressures
Yeah.
to make sure my kid is always studying and doing homework and doing exams, thinking that's going to make the kid smarter, and it isn't. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
the,
True.
the physical education teachers know generally they know what should be done. They're pretty smart, pretty that's what they do for a living. So they're just not given the right support and the right resources to action it most of the time.
Yeah. We have Karthik here, Dan. I think you probably would know him also. Would love to have you in India again. Always very inspiring to listen to you.
Karthik, yes, I do know him. Again, great guy, great coach, and yeah, hopefully I'll come back, man. I'd love to come back and see all of you guys.
Yeah, we have Ravi saying, I say we don't even need all this proven benefit. Kids will be happier if they just play physically. That should be good enough.
I 100% agree, Ravi, and it should be good enough. That's the thing. It should be good enough because you can just look back at human history and say that's how humans evolved. That's how animals evolved. That all animals play growing up because they're learning what their body can do and should do, and that's what play is for. So it's very obvious, super obvious, but unfortunately, the pressures and the societal pressures and arguments and come in
Yeah,
against that and override that. So while it is painfully obvious to most of us, the reason you need to sort of now look into the science of why it is true is because those arguments will then convince the people who don't believe it,
hmm.
who because they then go, okay, the science proves it. So, and unfortunately, a lot of the time you have to say. I mean, for us, it was very obvious that parkour makes you fit, strong, and healthy, and is a good thing to do. Like we knew that because we were training it. So it was. Experientially, we knew that it we because that's what we felt, that's what we experienced, that's what we saw happen to all the people that trained with us. But when we went to teach it in to schools or whatever, um, we we couldn't just use that empirical evidence. We had to say, look, here's the science behind this. Here's the science why movement helps the brain. Here's the science behind physical literacy being important and helping all other sports get better. Here's the science between moving outdoors regularly and mental health, the positive correlation between the two. Here's the science. Here's the studies that prove that. And then the people in charge who don't know that sort of stuff and who just follow written knowledge, they go, okay, well the science shows it, so we should go along with it. So unfortunately, you have to frame it in the language that those people need to hear it in, which is why we do all the science. But you're 100% right. It should be painfully obvious that humans are built to move,
Yeah.
designed to move, and should be moving often. But in the world we live in, unfortunately, we do need to educate people.
Yeah. And Dan, we have a request to show one of the Parker videos, and I don't think you have access to share. But what I'll do is I will post a video after this conversation onto the link
Cool,
here so that people can see it.
great
And
stuff.
just, yeah. So when you see those videos, Dan, and if anyone who sees Parker, like you said, it's all edited and it's all the high end stuff that media wants you to see, jumping from building to building. And even on the surface level or ground level, there is a lot of injury that comes with any sports, be it running or cycling, playing a sport. I mean, injury is a part of it, and that's how you learn. To I mean, that's
Mm,
kind of an adversity that you can use as a stepping stone. So
sure.
how does Parker make you more risk confident? Like people might see an obstacle and say, I think I'm going to fall, or I'll get hurt, I'll get injured, then I'll be bedridden. So how does it make someone more confident to do a particular step?
So there's a lot in that question. Parkour is the reason it makes you more confident is that because as an adult, this is if you're a physically illiterate child, as you say, um, they're very much in tune with their fear in their body, and so they typically will do stuff that they feel confident doing, and they'll just do it. They won't, and if there's something they're really afraid of, they won't do that either, because they're not, like, adults are often stupid enough to override their fear, but kids will listen to their fear, which is what it's for. So,
Yeah.
but for adults, often when they're exposed to the movements in parkour and just the nature of using their body in this way, it will expose them to fear very early on. And that exposure to fear, and then learning, we then give them the tools to manage that fear and to have that relationship, and to familiarize themselves with that emotion, which is a natural emotion. By doing that, it makes them less uncomfortable. It makes them more comfortable with the feeling of fear, and therefore it begins to move back. It begins to be pushed back. So, any psychologist will tell you that the way to overcome fear is through exposure to the thing that makes you afraid. So it's called microdosing, and by small, gradual, incremental exposure to the thing that you're afraid of, you become less afraid of it, because fear is just what you're not familiar with. So once you expose yourself to something bit by bit, gradually, in a safe, managed way, the thing becomes less scary. And it's the same with movement. So parkour just does that. It just exposes people in some ways, and it's an embodied practice of fear. It exposes you to your fear right from the start, and then gives you the
Yeah.
tools to then navigate it and manage it. And to which is a process, but it gives you those tools. So as long as you stick with it, you will get better at dealing with your fear, and therefore you'll be more confident. In terms of injuries, yeah, if you're living a life as a human being and not
Mm.
sitting in cotton wool, in fact, but even then you're going to get injuries, just going to get long-term injuries. But if you're living your life as a human being, it, you know, injury is part and parcel of it, because we're organic systems, and they break down, and they have problems, they're
Yeah.
biases, and they make mistakes. It's totally normal. So injury is normal in all sport, in all physical activity. Even if you don't do sport, you're going to get injured, one way or another, because you'll be less physically able, less resilient, whatever. So whatever path you choose, injury is a reality. The idea is to try to reduce the chance of being injured, and also to improve your body's resilience, so that if it does get injured, it recovers very fast. This is the optimal way to
Right.
live, I would think. Avoid injury as much as you can, and if you do get injured, recover as fast as you can. But the way to avoid injury is not to avoid movement or risk. That is the way to
Mhm.
guarantee injury. So you just guarantee it
Ah,
later, and you guarantee worse, because you guarantee things like postural problems, and like all the things that I mentioned already: obesity, heart disease, liver failure. All
yeah.
those things come from inactivity. So you're just guaranteeing injuries later on that are worse, that will kill you, by not exposing yourself to the small risks of injuries through doing physical activity in sport, which is a very, very small risk, like compared
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the risks of being run over or of drinking alcohol. These are much,
Yeah.
much more likely to do damage to you and kill you. So, and parkour, amongst sports, parkour is very low risk statistically. So as you say, in every sport there are injuries.
Right.
The sport with the most injuries every year is running. 80% of all runners every year have an injury of some sort. So it's a massive injury body in running, um, and and that's okay too. So, but the injuries that the sports that have more injuries than parkour are, for example, are running, rugby, football, boxing, hockey, horse riding. Almost all major sports have higher injury rate per 1,000 hours of practice than parkour does. So parkour, because it's natural movement, if it's trained gradually and progressively, it should reduce your chance of injury and therefore make you more confident to go about your life, because you're more agile, you're more spatially aware, you're stronger, you've got better balance. If you fall, you're more likely to be able to fall well and to manage the fall. um, so that physical confidence, again, it goes back to aligning action and perception. That physical ability then matches your perception of what you can do, which makes you much less likely to hesitate when you're moving, and it's hesitation that normally causes mistakes and falls and injuries. So that confidence, you're less likely to get injured. Physically literate children and physically literate humans get injured less than physically illiterate humans. So there's a reason for that. It's because the physically illiterate ones they're better with their bodies. They're just better.
Yeah,
So they're less likely to make a mistake. So they're less likely to have moments where they could get injured. They still might get injured,
yeah,
but they're
yeah,
less likely. So doing
right.
parkour definitely makes you safer. This is
Sure.
to me is very clear.
That's,
Training in
yeah,
something like parkour reduces your risk overall in life than not training in it.
yeah. That's nice. I mean, I think now anyone who watches any parkour video will be like, okay, I think I can do that with practice and still be healthy at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
The key thing, as you say, is that when you watch those videos and things, and you go, oh, "I'd never do parkour because I'll get hurt."
Yeah.
You would get hurt if you tried that. But that's like that would be like me
Yeah.
watching an international rugby match, um, and saying, "I'm never going to play rugby because I would get hurt if I was on that pitch." Well, yeah, I would. If I was on that pitch playing with international rugby players, I'd be killed in about 3 minutes because I'm not conditioned for rugby. So, but I'm not going to start on that pitch. I'm going to start playing rugby, in the park with other amateur players. So, and then eventually, if I
Yeah.
get to the elite level, I can play on a pitch like that. But to look at that international rugby match and therefore think I shouldn't play rugby is a real misalignment. It's a
No,
real misperception.
true.
So, for someone to look at an elite parkour athlete doing a jump between two buildings and then saying I don't want to do parkour is the same. So, well, you're not going to start with that. That
Yeah.
guy trained for 10 years to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you would start ground level, just learning to move, learning to roll, learning to vault, learning to land properly and take impact, learning to jump, learn to swing, just doing the basic human movement skills. That's how you start. And then later on, yeah, if you want to, you can do that stuff if you want to.
Yeah.
And very few people want to, really, at the end.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan. We have, in fact, some comments here, Dan. I'll just read them out. In fact, I think going back to the previous point that we were talking about physical education, in fact, physical education is also sometimes so strongly regimented without any dialogue that it robs half the fun. So, getting in touch with the capabilities of a body in a more natural fashion with a lot of awareness will help keep the interest alive.
100% right. That's 100% right, especially for children. You don't need to. So there's a difference between physical education, physical activity, and physical literacy, right? These are three different things. Physical education is understanding about the body and about movement and biomechanics, and physiology and anatomy, and skill acquisition and all that sort of stuff. That's physical education. Now, if you're a teacher, you need that. You need to know that stuff because you've got to create a program for movement to make better athletes or whatever. So that's physical education, and you can start learning that as a kid if you're into it. It might help. Physical activity is not physical education, right? Physical activity is just moving, it's doing stuff, playing, jumping, running, fighting, whatever, doing sport. And physical literacy is the building blocks of movement skill, which comes through physical activity. If the physical activity is varied enough and has enough variability and enough challenge that it develops physical literacy across the board. The three are different things. So kids don't need physical education really. They need physical activity
Yeah.
really. And which will give them physical literacy. They need to be doing stuff, and
Yeah.
kids will only do stuff if it's fun, which is exactly what that comment says. So if you make it
Yeah.
boring and regimented and feel like work to them, or it humiliates them and embarrasses them, they're not going to want to do it. So you've now taken away that kid's desire to be physical. Whereas if you just leave them to play, kids in a natural setting, if you leave a child alone and don't interfere with it, um, about 25% of all of its play, because not all play is physical, right? Some play is cerebral or object play or social play or whatever. But about 25% of all kids play naturally is what's called locomotor play or physical play. So about a quarter of their play time will be spent in very vigorous physical activity if they're left by themselves. All kids. So that's what you need to do. You need to leave them alone more. You just need to let
Yeah.
them play, or put them in situations where they will play with their friends and their peers, and give them the tools to play with. But let them go. Let them play. And that's where the physical literacy will come from, and then the love for physicality, because they become confident, they like it because they can do it, and then they want to test themselves, they want to challenge themselves, and then they want to play the sports and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's exactly right. It's got to be fun for them. It's got to be engaging, and the way you do that as an educator is often to step back and to just be a facilitator for them to play and to move by creating challenges. It's what's called constraints-led practice. So you create the constraints that they then have to move within and solve the problems within that challenge. And that's all you do. So you're not sort of sitting there and saying, move your arm like this, move your leg like this, bend your leg like that, achieve this particular movement. You're just saying, here's the
Yeah.
challenge, solve the challenge. And they
Yeah.
go out and solve it. And that is, for their brain and body, that is the best thing. And that's effectively, play.
Yeah. Basically, to just leave them alone and see how they do it instead of having
Yeah.
constraints.
Yeah, and then help, by,
Yeah.
if they need it, then you can go in and help and say, okay, how can we do it quicker, guys? What do we, so, let's take a basic example. So you say, right, the game, guys, today is, there's a load of equipment spread across the gym floor. You're
Mm.
going to start touching that wall. You're going to get to the other wall without touching the ground. That's the challenge. Let's do it. And first of all, you just let them do it. You just let them find a way across and jump and balance and swing or whatever, and they get across the other side. And you go, okay, great, everyone made it. Now everyone get back. Great, everyone gets back. And you go, right, I'm going to add another constraint, guys. You all did that. It was too easy. What's another challenge? Right, now you've got to do the same thing, but you've got to do it in 2 minutes. You saw that
Mm.
they did it in 2 minutes 30. For, say you timed the first one, you go, okay, now you've got to do it in 2 minutes. So now they're like, okay, I've got to move quicker. So now they've got to refine it. So maybe they don't do it this time. Maybe they get back in 2 minutes 20. You say, guys, why didn't you make it? And this is where it bleeds a little bit into physical education, because now they will go, well, they'll think about it and think, well, we didn't make it because we all bunched up on the right there trying to do the same path, for example. So there was a bottleneck and we couldn't do it. So you go, okay, so how are you going to solve that, guys? And they go, well, maybe we need to spread out more and give each other more space and
Mm.
build a bit of teamwork that way. You go, okay, let's try it again. So they do it again. This time they do it. They've learned something. They've improved their movement skill. They've worked as a team and they've thought about it. Then you do another challenge. Right now, you're going to be chased by the coach, and if you get caught, you're out while you're crossing the obstacles. Something like that. This is just introducing constraints. So you're not actually telling them how to move, but you're introducing constraints that will refine and guide their movement down the path that you want it to go down, in terms of making them more physically capable. So, and that's the kind of thing that we will do a lot in parkour with kids. They love it because it's fun. It's a game. It's play. They absolutely love it. They work super hard for the whole time, the whole hour, the whole 2 hours, whatever, because they enjoy it. So they don't even realize they're getting a workout,
Yeah.
and they're training their brain and their body at the same time. So it's totally a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have another comment. Dan Apurva says the way to avoid injuries is not to avoid sports. I think, again, going back to the previous conversation, great insight. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
hundred
think all
percent
these
right.
hindrances. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also a mindset thing in terms of, it's also a strange, a strange mindset to injuries, and there's this view that if you get injured, something that's a very bad thing, and something went wrong, and
Mm.
and therefore we should look at the thing that injured you, um, rather than looking at, what can we learn from the fact that we got injured. So injury is just, the way we see it, injury is just feedback. That's all it is. It's neither negative nor positive. It's just feedback on what you did. It just tells you something about what you did, and probably that you did something suboptimally because you didn't want to get
Mm.
injured. So that wasn't the outcome you wanted. So the things that you were doing, didn't lead to the optimal outcome. So that's all. It's just feedback. So then you use that and you say, well, why did that happen? What is that feedback giving? What is the feedback? What is the injury telling me, that occurrence telling me that I
Mm.
need to change and improve to get better and stronger and fitter and faster? So I'm not saying go out and get injured, but I'm saying if you do get
Mhm.
injured, your mindset should be one of, okay, what is the feedback here? Why did that happen? And how can I amend my approach so that I don't get injured in the future? The mindset, unfortunately, that the modern world has, and grew up in the 90s in terms of sort of the cotton wool approach to parenting and to education, is if someone gets injured, you must change the thing that injured them. This is completely wrong. This is a completely mad way of seeing the world. It's not
Yeah.
accurate at all, because the thing that injured them, it probably hasn't injured hundreds of thousands of other people doing the same thing. So it's not that thing is, unless it is injuring every single kid, in which case you go, yes, it's the thing,
Yeah.
but that's not the case. It's normally, it's a rare occurrence, but that doesn't mean you should then go, well, we need to change the thing. So I know you just look at that particular context of why that happened. Maybe it was something the kid did. Maybe it was the way the kid had been taught. Maybe the lack of physical literacy. Who knows? But changing the sport or something like that is very rarely the answer. It's normally a case of looking at a much bigger picture, a much broader picture, and understanding the nature of risk. Um, and unfortunately, we're way too reactionary now. So, for example, you know, in the UK, playgrounds, in the 90s and early 2000s, they went through a big change in that you'd get every now and again a kid would fall off a slide or a swing and get hurt. They'd break an arm or something. And that was pretty rare occurrence, very rare occurrence, but it would happen every now and again because these occurrences through the media and through social media were exacerbated and were publicized more. People then started to say, well, look at that kid. That kid got injured falling off a swing. Therefore, we need to change all swings in the
Oh,
UK. Yeah, or we need to remove all climbing frames, or we need to stop kids climbing trees because one kid fell out of a tree and got hurt. Well, this is a backwards madness way of thinking, because all that is going to do now is make fewer kids physically literate and physically confident. So you're going to have more kids that get injured because they'll be less physically literate and as they grow up. So you're increasing the injury by focusing on and emphasizing something that was very unusual, which is why it's in the news. um,
yeah.
Such as a kid falling off a swing and breaking their arm. There's nothing wrong with the swing. There's nothing wrong with the climbing frame. There's nothing wrong with the activity. It's just kid fell and broke his arm, which happens,
Yeah.
and as you say, that's a learning process for the kid too. They will
Or
get
for
they will
anyone, I think, for that
they will get
matter.
stronger and better as a
Yeah.
result of that, if they're given the mindset with which to do it. So, but yeah, to change, to do things like that, or as some schools did here a few years ago, they banned cartwheels in the playgrounds. You're not allowed to do a cartwheel as a kid in the playground, because apparently some kid once doing a cartwheel hurt themselves. So
Oh.
now no kid can do cartwheels. So
So
now you're
that still
taking away
happens?
every.
It's still on? I
Uh,
mean,
yeah, there are some schools that still have that ban. So it's like, well, so you're taking away every kid's natural desire to invert themselves, which clearly improves their spatial awareness and their rotation in their balance in rotation and their balance in flight, which makes them less likely to fall over and get hurt. You're going to take away every kid's ability to naturally train that because one kid got hurt doing a cartwheel. This is it's just insane. But those laws are made by people who do not understand the human body and physicality, and physical literacy. They just don't understand it. So the people making the laws and the rules are not capable of making those rules. They shouldn't be making those rules. So that's the situation we're in now, unfortunately. So
yeah.
um, those sort of things. They as movement practitioners, as teachers, as we teach in the schools, we teach kids all the time. It just drives you crazy. You look at that and you think, just how can you be so ignorant as an adult to make that sort of decision to ban cartwheels? Like, human beings
Yeah.
have been doing cartwheels for hundreds, probably thousands, probably tens of thousands,
Yeah.
probably hundreds of thousands of years. It's clearly not a problem for our species. So, banning it is just madness.
Yeah. We have a comment, Dan, from Ajay. So true, and the more physically active you are, the faster your chance of recovery
Yeah,
from
for sure.
injury.
From any injury,
Yeah.
yeah, and especially when it comes down to, flexibility and strength. So the flexibility and strength of your body and the mobility of your body, um, if you get injured, the better those three things are in balance, the more like the quicker you will recover. Yeah, if you've got really strong musculature and you get injured, your body will recover very very quickly. Um, and if you good flexibility and good mobility, and also you're less likely to get injured because you're less likely
Yeah.
to be put in a position, a structural position that your body can't handle. So yeah, the more all your systems work better when you're fitter and healthier. Your lymph flows better, your circulation flows better, and the more blood flow you get, the quicker you heal as well. The lymphatic system works better, and that's huge importance in healing and recovery. So um, definitely, the fitter and healthier you are, the quicker you recover. And we see this all the time because we see athletes get injured from all walks of life, and we see how quickly they can recover when compared to an untrained adult who gets injured. Can take them a long time to recover because their body just doesn't have the mechanisms to snap back into place healthily. So yeah, it's much better to be, it's much better to be healthy.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't necessarily have to be uber fit. You don't have to be like elite sports fit, but it's
Hmm.
much better to be healthy and generally in shape if you want to optimize your life over a long period of time.
Yeah, wonderful. And just switching gears a bit, Dan, and coming to like competitions. So, are there any Parker competitions that happen around the world? Is the Ninja Warrior one of them? Is that Parker?
So Ninja Warrior is its own competition. That was something that originated in Japan, and it's kind of a different thing. But parkour people do very much engage with it and normally win those competitions.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are parkour competitions around the world. The first one I think was in the UK, 2008. Which was done by Barclaycard or sponsored by Barclaycard. So there have been competitions for a long time in parkour. They they're kind of controversial in the parkour community. A lot of parkour practitioners have no interest in them, but there are a lot that do, especially in America. The North American parkour culture is really into the competition thing, and that's
Yeah.
probably a reflection of their culture. But um, so they took it on big style. So there are a lot of competitions over there. There are none in the UK. There are very few in Europe. There's the Art of Motion, which is a Red Bull one that happened for about 10 years in Greece. But so there are competitions. They're very controversial because how do you compete in something that's essentially an individual practice of self-improvement and self-knowledge? How do you compete in that?
Mm.
Philosophically, there are problems around it.
Right.
Um, but the way people go around the problem is they have sort of speed competitions or style competitions or skill competitions in parkour, and so you can compete in individual aspects of it. Like you can compete in a skill, or you can compete at just how fast you can go over terrain, and those things. So which is great. Some people love doing that, and the competitions are slowly getting better and refining. A lot of them are really bad and terrible, but some of them are, the parkour communities behind them. A lot of them are very smart and they think about it a lot and they've practiced them a
Mm.
lot. So they're getting better, and some people really really enjoy them. So all good, but it's also very important that that the non-competitive original root of parkour is kept alive, and the reason is
Mhm.
is that more than 50% of all children in the world have no interest in competitive sport. So you've got to have activities and disciplines for the majority of children who are not interested in competitive sport. As well as providing for the ones who are. So I think it's very important that the original root of parkour, and for me, that's my
Yeah.
way in and my approach. I was never really into competitive martial arts. I was always into just the practice of it for self development.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, that's the real beauty of parkour and the real gem that is hidden within it. And that's what I teach and that's what I practice. So I very much want that to be kept alive, and that's why Parkour Generations was founded, was to maintain and preserve and protect that original spirit and original idea of parkour. But if people want to compete and create those competitions, all good, great, go for it. Just do it as well as
Yeah.
you can,
Yeah. No.
and yeah, all good.
Yeah, but that's a beautiful thought. I mean, you've kind of kept that alive, saying that this is what Parker stands for. It's mostly for self-development. It's not about competing with one another in a global platform. But that's a wonderful thought that you've kept that intact.
Yeah, that was, again, that was what it was when I found it. So when I started training in parkour, there were very few people in the world that knew what it was. There's maybe 50 people in the world that did it. It was a tiny practice, and that's what it was. There was no thought of competition or doing it to be on TV or videos. There was no YouTube back then or anything like that. So there was no thought to using it to show off or make money
Yeah.
or win prizes or anything like that. It was just, this is our practice. This is we do this to test ourselves, to find out who we are as people, to improve ourselves, to have fun, and to be with our friends, and build those bonds. And
Yeah.
that was why, that's what attracted me to it. So I when the development happened in parkour of it being on YouTube and people putting videos on to get likes, or
Mm.
filming their training, or there's nothing wrong with filming your training, there's some use to it, but when that rush happened and that evolution happened in parkour and competitions and stuff, it was very strange for practitioners like me to, it was because we just, it was just like not what we did. So when people said, "What,
Yeah.
oh, why aren't there videos of you training?" It was like, why would there be videos of us training? Why would I video my own training? I
Mm.
I'd go out to train, not to put it on YouTube or Instagram. I don't care. So, but there are generations now that grew up with that, so it's normal for them. But yeah, back then that was how we found it. That was how I encountered it. That was what it gave to me. That was incredibly special, was that self knowledge piece. So that's what I want to pass on to other people, because I think that's
Yeah.
what's a real benefit in the world. I think that's what's a real benefit to human beings. That's what can really change someone's life, maybe give them confidence, or give them a place where they feel at home, or a sense of belonging, or a sense of self-worth, or a sense of self-reliance, self-efficacy. um, those things are more important to a human being, I think, than the ability to do a backflip or win a competition or anything like that. I think those things come and go, but the emotional learning and the psychological development you get through it, the self-knowledge you get through it, that stuff stays with you until the moment you die. So I think that's, for me, that's more important. It makes more sense to teach that.
Yeah. We have Ravi saying, so refreshing to hear that thought, just doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, doing it for intrinsic purpose, which is, you can divide any activity in the world into these two groups. Do you do it for intrinsic value, or do you do it for extrinsic value, i.e., points, recognition, prizes, whatever, social status? There's an extrinsic value. Intrinsic value is something you do just because you love to do it, and because it gives you something, intrinsic, something internal that you want to get more of. So you do it for that intrinsic value. Play is, that's one of the, and that, interestingly, that's one of the defining factors in play. Something is only considered play if it is done for intrinsic value.
Yeah.
um, and kids play for intrinsic value. They don't play for points. They play because they love to play. So,
Yeah.
and adults don't, as adults, we don't do that so much. Everything we do is geared more and more. Everything is geared towards, what's the extrinsic value of doing this thing? Is this going to make me
What's in
richer?
it for me?
Is it going to
Yeah.
make me more attractive? Is it going to bring me more friends? Is it going to get me a better
Mm.
house? Those are extrinsic value things. There's very few things that are done for intrinsic value now, and that's a huge problem for the development of a healthy human being. So it's very important to find things that you do just because you love to do it.
Yeah. And what was your first, I mean, what really motivates you, Dan? I mean, what was the first time, when was the first time when you took a jump that you feared, that you knew that you couldn't do it? And after that, or then, what really motivated you to, you know, keep going and doing this? What motivates you?
Pretty much the first jump that I ever did. So when I first found parkour, I was living in Japan, like I said, and we saw it in this movie, and we looked up some stuff online a little bit. There was, there was a forum in French and whatever, and you could sort of, some of the guys would sort of upload videos. It took ages to download the video. Back then you had to wait like 20 minutes, whatever, while your computer downloaded it, and then you could watch it. So we saw that, and we were kind of like, okay, this is awesome. Let's go out and try this. We were living, me and two friends, shout out to Hudson and Adriano. We were living in Japan. We didn't know what we were doing, but we went out and trained and tried some stuff in the city we were living in. And the first sort of jump at height that I looked at was just what we call an arm jump or a cat leap, which is a jump from one wall to another. It was probably 15 foot up, 20 foot up, maybe. And it was, I don't know, maybe 8 feet across. So, and there was a railing on the other side. So I looked at it and I knew physically I could jump that far. And I knew probably I can grab the railing, and probably I can pull myself up on the other side. So probably I'm not going to fall. If I fall, I'll probably only get hurt. It's not going to kill me, but it's probably going to hurt in some way. Um, so, um, and as soon as I looked at that jump and started thinking about it, I felt a sense of fear, which I hadn't felt in a long time because I got very comfortable in training in martial arts and fighting in that sphere. So I was no longer afraid in that sphere. But as soon as I looked at this jump, I felt afraid and my heart started going. And, I kind of thought, okay, I could probably do this, but there's a consequence to me not doing it. And therefore, and then the psychological battle comes in and is like, well, why do it then? There's no one here that's going to care whether you do it or not. There's no prizes. This is obviously before YouTube, etc. So, it wasn't my profession or anything. So it's like, there's no reason to do it. But then you kind of part of your mind rises up to that and says, but I know I can do it. So why wouldn't I do it? Doesn't that show that I want to be in control? I don't want my fear to be in control of my actions. I want to be in control of my actions. So it was then a very interesting relationship there and then in that moment between me and my fear as to who was in control of what I did. And I wanted to be in control. So I overcame that fear and did the jump, and climbed up on the other side. And the minute, you finish a jump like that, certainly when it's early on, but at any stage in your training, but certainly in the first few times you do that, the person that lands a jump like that is different from the person that takes off. That's kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah. So when you climb up from that jump, when you stand up and you've done that jump, you're different. You realize now that, okay, I had a choice back then. I could either let my fear choose or I could choose, and I chose. And that then changes your perception of life, because then you then realize, wait a minute, how many other choices in life are being driven by my fear? Not my choice. What other choices have I made in life, or am I making every day, that are driven by fear rather than by what I want, or what would be good for me, or what I'm capable of? So you then reevaluate everything. So and then after, as soon as I did that jump, I was like, okay, this is me for life now. I'm training in this forever.
Wow.
So it became a big part of my training after that, and it's never gone away. So and everyone will encounter that when they have that first moment of, we call it breaking a jump in French. Casser un saut, to break a jump, was the original term, which meant to do a jump that challenged your body and mind together. That was a real challenge to actually overcome that jump, or whatever. It doesn't have to be a jump, any movement challenge, but to actually rise to the challenge and do it when it's kind of on the limits of your ability, psychologically. To do that is called breaking a jump, and it's a very powerful process, and it's a very powerful kind of elixir, in that once you've tasted it, you realize, this is healthy for me. I should do this fairly regularly, because by doing so, it pushes my potential, it expands my potential, and it liberates me. So it becomes a very healthy kind of thing to do regularly. And you then realize that when you stop doing it, if you stop training that aspect, because you can train parkour without breaking jumps, but if you stop training that aspect and then you try it again, you realize that it's hard again, and that it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens and it atrophies, and so you have to then retrain it and get it back again. So it's something you realize, I've got to sort of keep doing that, otherwise I'm going to lose it. So it's very interesting, and that's pretty much what motivates me in parkour in terms of my own
Yeah.
training. Yeah.
And I just love this breaking the jump. I mean, that is something that anyone and everyone listening in right now can use that in any walk of life.
Yes.
It's just about breaking the jump. I mean, I think this is the key takeaway that
Yeah, it could be.
from this.
You're right. It
Yeah.
doesn't even need to be a physical thing. It's any moment in life, really, where you're faced with the choice of, are you going to give in to your fear and let that decide for you? Or are you going to be more proactive and self-governed and autotelic, as is an old phrase that I like, which means self-purposed? You decide your purpose. Are you going to be more autotelic and you decide what you're going to do, rather than letting your fear decide? And you could do it in any situation. It could be, going and talking to talking to a good-looking stranger in a bar, or going
Mm.
for a job interview, or deciding to get married, or whatever. It doesn't need to be a physical thing. It's just that, how do you deal with those choice moments between acting out of being governed by your fear or you being in charge? And like anything, you get better at that process the more you practice it. So if you have a practice that exposes you to moments of choice like that, then you will be more likely to be in control when those moments come around. So that's why parkour as an embodied practice of fear is really healthy, because it's regularly exposing you to moments of choice like that, that then bleed over into your everyday life. When you're not doing parkour and you experience a fearful moment, you're more likely now to have a resource to draw on that's going to give you more power to make the right choice.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, and it's said across also that the body and mind work together. A physically active body will have a physically active mind because they both work in tandem. And like you said, Parker and bringing parallels of Parker to the various walks of life, it just kind of makes you deal with those obstacles in a different way. Because in Parker, you might come across a physical obstacle, whereas in life there might be a mental obstacle, but you are one person and you have that one mind, so it will help you in overcoming that.
Yeah, as we all know, these aren't new concepts. Men sana in corpore sano, the old, strong minded and strong body, um, is a very old concept that goes back thousands of years.
Yeah,
In all the old cultures, they have this understanding that if you have a healthy body, you're more likely to have a healthy mind, and
yeah.
vice versa. So it's an old concept, and it's one that is we definitely need to keep it alive for the health of the species, in this day and age, especially because in this day and age there's more. It's just easier these days to let the body and the physical elements of your life disappear because of social media and technology, which allows you to get food delivered to your door, and you can work from home and whatever. So everything can be done through technology and remotely now. So it's very easy to let the body, the physical element of life, slide away and deteriorate as a species, going forwards, which is over the next sort of 50, 100, 200 years is going to be very interesting for humanity, um, because we've never had a stage like this where you actually can, in theory, live your life without um, caring for the body very much. Your life is going to be shorter and worse, but you could probably live without being physically active nowadays. Whereas 2,000 years ago, you just couldn't. If you weren't physically active, you would die. Um, so
Yeah, yeah.
um, so for the first time ever in human history, it is now capable to just sort of forget about the body, and that's why we're seeing the huge increase in illness and sickness and disease and stuff like that in them, and our lifespans are increasing, but our health spans are decreasing, in proportion. And for me that's an issue, and something that humanity will have to address.
Yeah. Some more comments here, Dan, just before my last question. Yes, I feel that during writing, should I give in to my fear and self doubt and not write? Or should I believe in myself and push through because I can? Recognizing and becoming aware of the choice moments, pivot points is also key. Thanks for that insight.
I mean, that's a comment that's close to my heart, because I'm a writer too. So, and writing is one of those. Writing is a really, really interesting discipline in that it's so much an isolated discipline, right? There's no one that can help you write. Okay, you just have to do it. You just have to do the work, and that's very tough. Like going to the gym, yes, it's tough, but you've got other people around you. When you go to the gym, there'll be another 20 people there in the class, or your friends are there, or your coach is there. They're going to motivate you. They're going to kick your ass and whatever. Writing is not like that. Writing is you shut yourself away in a room with no one around. You isolate yourself, and you have to find the discipline and the motivation from within. It's very tough. So I completely empathize with that. um,
Mhm.
and it is very easy to give in to the fear and the self doubt and be like, oh no, I'm I'm rubbish. I'm not good enough. No one's going to read this, and just not do it, and give up or procrastinate. But you're 100% right. You have to. The writing is about the discipline. It is You must just discipline yourself to be like, I'm going to do this every day, every morning, every time, whatever time you set for yourself, I'm going to write. Even if it's rubbish and you throw it away at the end of your session, it's
Mhm.
a practice. You've got to do the work, do the work, do the work. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It's one of those things like as many as a famous writer said that, in terms of someone said, how do you where do you get your inspiration from? I can't remember who the writer was. It was being interviewed, and an interviewer asked, where do you get your inspiration from? And the writer answered, "It's funny, the harder I work, the easier the inspiration comes." So the more regularly you sit down at the table, the more likely the inspiration is to come. It's nothing to do with inspiration. Inspiration comes from the work. So do the
Yeah.
work that creates the space that creativity can come into. If you just sit around and wait to be inspired, you'll be sitting all day because there's no space for it to come into. You have to create the space, which is the space of work, the space of effort, um, and that's how good writers or prolific writers create so much, is that they just do the work. Is it Aditi?
Yeah.
Do the work. That's my recommendation. Do the work. There's lots of good writings on that. There's lots of good books on that sort of thing. Stephen Pressfield's stuff, the War of Art and all that kind of stuff, really good. Just go into that art of resilience in writing, and it's yes, writing, movement, whatever. You've got to have control in those moments. So do push through. Yes.
Yeah, and thanks for this, Bran. And there's just like so many similarities, that you can draw parallels with life and the sport that you do, uh, you know. And this is just wonderful, and it's really nice to have you come and explain this. And it's not just about the physical movement; it's about the mental movement, and it's about how you see those obstacles and how you see those challenges and fears that you have in your mind and overcome them and apply them elsewhere as as
100%.
well. So very
Yes.
very insightful. And before I end, Dan, which has been your most difficult parkour movement?
Well, as in physical technical move.
Physical technical move, yeah.
Um, it's so there's many ways to answer that question. Probably one way of answering is parkour isn't about technique. It's not about its individual techniques or movements. It's about a concept of being adaptive and responding to terrain, and having the physical and mental adaptability to deal with any situation that comes to you. So it's not necessarily about ticking off individual techniques or mastering individual moves. Uh, Having said that, if I was kind of have to look at movements that are tough, I mean, you could look at them. You could then say, well, there are some that are anatomically more difficult for me because of my anatomy. Because I'm a certain height and have certain lever length, so certain movements are just harder than, say, for a shorter person. So you could go into that. I wouldn't really think like that. I would say probably my answer would be that the hardest thing to get right over and over and over again. So the hardest thing to, let's say, the hardest thing to not do wrong, let's say, is rolling. So when you land in parkour and to disperse impact from a drop from height, we roll. So we land and we do a shoulder roll to disperse the impact. It's incredibly effective. There's lots of data on it now that shows why it's so effective in terms of impact absorption for the body, or impact dispersal. But to do it on a hard surface such as concrete, uh, and not sort of hit a bone, or like a shoulder bone, or the sacrum, or coccyx or something like that, and to have pain from bone in concrete, is that's the real skill in parkour, and most practitioners neglect it, and most people can't do it regularly. And even if you get 9 rolls out of 10 right, the 10th one you get wrong will kind of hurt, and it
Mm.
bruises you, and it then puts you off doing that movement again, right? So to be able to roll consistently right, as in never feeling any pain from any roll, that is technically maybe the hardest thing I think to do, and it's one of the most neglected things really, but it's one of the most important, because you need it to be able to take impact well from any sort of height, kind of head height or above. You definitely want to be thinking about rolling. So probably that, I would say, is maybe the most challenging. And I'm fine with rolling, because I grew up doing martial arts, aikido and judo and jiu-jitsu and all these disciplines in which we roll a lot. So I had loads of background in rolling, and when I came to parkour, it was very easy to adapt it slightly. So I'm pretty comfortable with rolling as athletes go, but I would say that technically is maybe the hardest thing to get 100% right. It's the hardest thing to not do wrong. That's what I'd say.
Uh, because I was expecting a completely different answer. I thought you're going to say, okay, when I jumped from one rock to the other, like in that picture, or from one building to the other.
Oh, like in an actual specific moment. I can't really think of anything. No, I mean most stuff in parkour is no. I mean in that case, it's not those. No, the big jumps, the jumps at height, the jumps across gaps. No, they're not technically the hardest. They're very simple. They're just psychological challenges, as in, do you have the confidence to apply all your skill and power to make it, and do you have the power to make it? That's the main question. Technically, they're not complicated. So technically, the hardest jumps to do in parkour and the hardest movements to do are always really kind of small, horribly awkward challenges that we give ourselves and our friends in training, like jumping from taking one step on a lamppost to landing 1 foot on another railing to then jumping and landing on a pole like in a koala position or something, doing that kind of thing without messing up. That sort of technically is those challenges are really really tough. Or rail precisions where you're landing on a rail and you're jumping blind to it, so maybe you have to jump over a wall and land on a railing, a thin handrail, but you can't see the railing until you're in the air. Technically those sort of things are much harder than doing big jumps across gaps. Those are solely about your confidence and
Mm,
your ability, which comes with time and experience. But in terms of technical skill, they're normally quite easy.
yeah, it's nice to get that viewpoint from you because as a layman, someone would obviously see that as the most difficult thing, but it's nice to know that
No,
there are
definitely
other
not.
things which are, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're definitely not.
But
And that's interesting is that all the roof jumping stuff is shown often as like the pinnacle of parkour, but it's definitely not the hardest thing to do in parkour. Definitely not. It's just the most impressive visually or in terms of what you look at, but and
yeah,
psychologically it can be impressive. But
yeah.
in terms of the confidence you need as an athlete to do that, but physically though they're definitely technically not the hardest.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dan. It was wonderful having you here and share these insights with us. And I'm going to share all the details, your website and the other details after this in the notes so that people can see that. And I believe we have classes around in India, in Delhi, in Mumbai, and Calcutta, where
Yep.
you said, right? So I'm going to
Yeah,
put
and
those up.
Chennai, and yeah, there's lots of good organizations
Yeah.
in India who are teaching, and who are teaching really well. So there are good coaches there. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm going to put those up, and I'm sure it's inspired many people to take that up. And yeah, and like you said, it should not be a hindrance, be it at any age. You can do this and improve yourself physically and mentally.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and thank you very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure to chat about this. I'm super passionate about this stuff, as you can tell. I love talking about it. So
Yeah,
thank you very much for the conversation and for everyone that listened in and commented and stuff. So also, thank you guys for those comments. And yeah, as you say, everyone can do this sort of stuff. Just have the confidence to go and try, and get some good guidance, do some study, do some research. But yeah, go and try it, and you might find that it's something that makes a big impact on your life, and that you end up keeping as part of your practice.
yeah. And I have these one of my favorite quotes from one of the Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, that I keep, telling myself and also quoting it every now and then. And it applies completely to Parker is the impediment to action advances action. What stands
Yes,
in the way becomes the way. Marcus
yes.
Aurelius.
That is. I mean, we have it on the. We have, well, we use the simplified version. The obstacle is the way. So, and that phrase is on the back of some of our t-shirts and stuff, some of our clothing, because that one concept sort of embodies all of parkour in that one phrase. Yeah, and Aurelius and the Stoics were incredible thinkers, and we need more of their philosophy in modern life for sure. But yeah, the obstacle is the way. Is if you have that way of thinking, then your life is definitely gonna improve. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, that's very nice to know because when I was hosting this podcast, I kind of was thinking, what should I name it? What should the title be? And just today, I was like, okay, maybe it should have been Obstacle is the Way. And I didn't know that it's written, at the back of the instructors at Parkour, behind the t-shirts.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely a core principle within our education process and our education process for coaches and that. But yeah, it sort of describes parkour. That's what parkour is, right? It's we're taking obstacles and we're making them our path. Those obstacles become our way forwards, and therefore they stop becoming obstacles. They just become stepping
Yeah,
stones to get us where we want to go, and they make us better. So that
yeah,
concept, Aurelius's idea was um, the difficult things in your life. They're the things you should embrace because they will make you better. So they are the way forwards. So seek out the difficult things. That is the nature of parkour, seeking challenge in that way. So it really it's a perfect phrase for parkour. Yeah, really captures what we do.
yeah. Sure. Thanks a lot, Dan. And thank you, everyone, for joining in and being so interactive. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put up all those details on the notes.
Thank you very much. Real pleasure.
Thank you.